Bonjour, c'est Stéphane Leonardi, artiste Topps, et vous écoutez le podcast Rebel Base Card. Great pool, kid.
Everything's under control, situation normal, but everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now, thank you. How are you?
Everything's gonna be all right, kid.
You found the Rebel Base Card Podcast.
She may not look like much, but she's got it where it counts, kid.
I'm your host, Greg McLaughlin.
Have I made a few bad decisions? Sure.
We talk about cards, collecting Star Wars, and to people in the Star Wars community.
Don't worry, we're gonna meet up with some friends of mine.
Look for special episodes called The Breakfast Pack, talking about your favorite Star Wars shows.
We will never have a better chance than this.
All right, let's get started.
Well, perhaps it is time to begin again.
Welcome back, or if this is your first episode, welcome aboard. My name is Greg McLaughlin, and this is the Rebel Base Card Podcast. Hope everybody out there is doing good tonight, or wherever, or whenever you are listening to this. We have Stephane Leonardi. He is an artist who has worked on the Topps Star Wars Chrome 2024, as well as some other sets as well. One of the things that I like when it comes time for a set to debut is that a lot of the artists that'll work on it, if you follow them on Instagram, you'll start seeing the work pop up as they are then allowed to display what they've been working on for months, and in some cases much longer than that. But a lot of times what I like to do in my Instagram feed is share some of the posts to my story, and then click on it that way to make sure they get credit for it, but it's a nice way to kind of like share the art, share the cards, as it were, and to kind of hopefully bring some attention, or at least get it out there a little more. If there's anything I can do on that front, but we got to kind of talking back and forth on Instagram, and decided it was a good time. Maybe we can do a chat, and so we found a time on a Saturday afternoon. It was more Saturday evening on his part, but had a great conversation. And it was really, really fun to kind of find out, what his process is, what his story is, and learn more about the cards. And I think you're really going to enjoy this. It was a lot of fun. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, more with Stephane Leonardi.
You can waste time with your friends when your chores are done. Now, come on, get to it.
Hello, everybody. This is Tom Gross of Teachers in the Dungeon. You're listening to the Rebel Base Card Podcast. Great pull, kid.
All right. Just a few things in Homestead Keeping before we get into our interview with Stephane Leonardi. One of the things that's coming out, we have a couple of dates. The Topps Star Wars Galaxy did get moved from 10/25 to 11/1. This is all tentative, but as you are probably hearing this, it should be towards the end of the week. I am seeing boxes now going for around $300 for pre-order. Lord knows what's going to happen when they actually hit the streets, but whether or not we can all afford the hobby boxes is one thing, but the thing that I would say is that be on the lookout for the day of, because a lot of the artists on Instagram who've been under NDA will be posting the sketch cards they did, which are actually, I think, going to be easier to find than the autographs this year for the Galaxy set. So I always enjoy day one, because you're going to see a lot of those artists' cards, and I usually try to put them in my stories as they post them. So you can go on to my Instagram page, and if you look at the stories, you should see a lot of the sketch cards that I have done as well. Now, on November 4th, we have the Star Wars Unlimited Twilight of the Republic release, which is coming out. Greg Cass and I, who have talked about this on our talk with Star Wars Unlimited, that will be something where I did do a pre-order there, and hopefully now that volleyball has passed, I will be getting back hopefully into some of the draft events as I am building new sets for Star Wars Unlimited. This is going to be kind of an exciting set because you have droids and clones. That's kind of more or less I wouldn't say a new mechanic so far, as a lot of the cards are going to be adding on. So there's going to be a lot of cards on the table, and you're going to be getting cards and losing cards right away. But when it comes out on November 4th, you're going to have new starter packs. You're going to have a new pre-order, like there is a pre-release pack that has a number of boosters in it, and then of course the booster boxes, which unlike Galaxy, you can actually afford, because the booster boxes are like around $100. for 24 packs. And then the starter pack has, of course, 2 different decks in them, and then everything you need to play. So if you haven't had a chance to play yet, you can pick up the starter packs, and those are usually still on the shelf even after day 1. They're usually on there. And the other cool thing about it is new game mats, as well as new card sleeves. I've said it before, where I like to put the cards that I get into sleeves based on release, and as these get, as more and more releases come out, I can kind of tell what cards came in from what release. So that way I can kind of, eventually as I kind of get into building decks, I'll know what cards are what. I'll have to kind of change them around, or I'll put them in uniform ones if I'm building decks and I'm going to keep them there. But just for organization of these as I'm kind of putting them together. So I'll be kind of excited to see some of these new cards. Some of the showcase art cards that I've seen on Instagram already, they are amazing. And even some of the bases now have some mechanics in them. So it's now not just a rando base that you get and just a color. So now there might be some things that actually happen when you put some of these bases together with your characters. So at any rate, but that is coming out on November 4th. Now, just lastly, we've got a lot of content coming up in this month. I've got a number of shows that are already in the can. This is unlike me. Sometimes I don't like to get too far ahead, because then the shows don't come out for weeks. But November is packed. We also have the Rebuilding of the Galaxy parts 3 and 4, as well as a talk with Dan Zare from Coffee with Kenobi. He's going to be on as well. And if I look at my release schedule, we still have artist Mark Tompkins out of the UK. He's going to be debuting for the first time out at the Winter London Film and Comic-Con. Had a great conversation with him. Sal Berry, who you heard on the Topps Disney Deal Part 2, he's going to come on and talk about the Comtech Kenner releases from Kenner and Hasbro that actually talked. And I actually have, I can't wait. I have a Comtech reader coming in, so I can't wait to hear some of those voices as well. As we just talked about with Adam Marks, we have his kind of talk about the latest Garbage Chute Droids, and then we have a surprise guest. I'm not going to give it away because I haven't done this interview yet, but this is it's going to be one that was on my bucket list for quite some time. It's going to be a huge surprise for me when I get it done, but I can't wait to share that with you. So, and then of course later on this month we have the November Chicago Sports Spectacular. Always fun to see who's there and some friends there. In December, of course, we have Skeleton Crew. And so Greg Cass and I will be back on a regular basis doing the breakfast packs. So, boy, you think we're getting towards the end of 2024. We got a lot of stuff coming up. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out. We are going to get into our discussion with Stephane Leonardi, but I'm going to have Adam Marks come on first, talk about New York Comic Con before that. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
This is Mark Mulcaster from Fan for Tracks, and you are listening to the Rebel Base Card Podcast. She may not look like much, but she's got it where it counts.
Stay on target. We're too close. Stay on target.
Adam, you'll see a method to my madness here as we are kind of getting into Homestead Keeping on this particular episode where we're talking to a Topps artist. But I was kind of curious. You did get a chance to go to New York Comic Con. This has been on my bucket list for a while, man. But you were boots on the ground. I know we just have a few minutes. Can you kind of let me know how was New York Comic Con and what did you get a chance to do?
Yeah, I've been going the last few years to Comic Con. I'm in New Jersey, so it's hard for me to travel to long distances. I'd love to go to Celebration one day and other things, but New York Comic Con, it's a 40-minute drive into the city for me. I would say it definitely is not as interesting and exciting as it's been in years past. I know over the last few years, just some of the exclusive and engagements have definitely gone down, but it's still a blast. I usually go in for a day or so by myself, and then we'll go in as a family over the weekend. One of the things I always check out is, of course, the Topps booth, which is usually exclusive. Last year, they had the high tech that they previewed with some of the New York Comic Con exclusive cards that you can get by doing kind of a factory tour. This year, I was a little upset that there wasn't as many exclusives. There was the Shin promo, that they were putting out for high tech as well that I was able to get. And I know I was able to pick one up for you, which I still have to ship that out to you.
Yay.
But what's interesting was when you go into the booth at Topps, speaking of which, they had these 2 giant uncut sheet of cards, which driving into New York that morning, I was listening to your podcast actually about the new Galaxy set that was coming out. And I wasn't aware, literally until that morning, that they were doing these kind of case hit chases of the John Tyler Christopher comic cover artwork. So I've actually been collecting his comic cover books literally since day one. One of the prizes of my collection is actually a black and white Star Wars #1, which was a Luke Skywalker. It was only given out at C2E2 in Chicago, but signed by Mark Hamill. So that's kind of super rare, super cool card. But I've got to know John over the years because he does a lot of exclusives on his site as well. So they had these 2 uncut sheets, one which was a Superfractor print, and then one which I think was the Mojo print of all of his, I guess, I don't know if it's all or some of the comic book cover art of what's coming up in the upcoming Galaxy set. So it was cool waiting online, really looking at those. And as it turns out, he was actually at New York Comic Con as well, down at Artist Alley. So I went down and met him, and I'm like, hey, John, did you know that they're featuring your artwork up in the Topps booth? And he had no idea. Like, so I know he later went up and to look at the artwork and everything like that. It was just kind of funny. Literally 2 floors up from where he was sitting, 2 uncut sheets of his artwork was sitting up there. But it was just so I've gotten to know some of the people at the Topps booth. It's funny going back year after year, and they're like, "Hey, I remember you from last year." Not sure if that's a good or a bad thing, but so the Topps booth was okay. I mean, it wasn't as exciting, I think, as years past, where they had a lot more exclusive cards. You did their little factory tour, was very Garbage Pail Kid themed. If you had any of their digital apps, you can get a scratch off card, and you get some free. So some free cards, I know, like in the Star Wars app, which I was able to get as well. So that was fun. I mean, I definitely went back to that booth a few times. Got to do a bunch of other things, in there, a couple of panels. Got to see, not Star Wars related, but they had a panel for Lord of the Rings: The War of the Rohirrim, which is an animated movie coming out in December, and Stephen Colbert moderated a panel with all the cast and the director and the writers. That was fun. It's just kind of going around. There's definitely a lot to do. Did not buy nearly as much as I think I have in years past. I mean, it's so big. Just watching and looking at all the costumes and the cosplay that people have, it is just unbelievable. So, yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me has always been just kind of running out to the Topps booth, running out to some of the book publisher booths. I was able to get an autographed copy of Charles Soule's newest Reopublic book that he was there signing copies of. They have this new Mon Mothma book coming out as limited time. If you go to the booth and say Mon Mothma requires your assistance or something like that, you get a free copy of it. Missed out on the first day. The second day, the floor opened at 10 o'clock. I got there at 10:02, and they had already gone through their allocation of a free copy. So I never quite got that book. But no, it's just going out to the panels, going out to the show floor. If you get a 4-day pass, you can definitely find enough time to spend the entire 4 days just looking through everything there. But, I'm a card nerd, so it's always that Topps booth and just trying to see what I can get from that booth. Like I said, they've always had more exclusive in the past. I was hoping that there'd be more exclusives this year. There unfortunately weren't, but I was able to at least get a few things and got a couple Garbage Pail Kid pins. And they even had a vending machine where they were giving out blaster packs for Garbage Pail Kids and Star Wars and some other cards. My son always loved going there and getting free cards too. It was always fun. So we always want to make sure to hit that up.
That's cool. And yeah, especially, when we think about, San Diego Comic-Con kind of being something that's almost like mythical, where it's like, oh yeah, you go far out west and you spend a lot of money and it's just a lot of people. It's nice because Topps is in New York, so you're gonna see Topps, and usually Topps Digital has a nice presence there as well, but it is something where especially a lot of folks are on the East Coast like, okay, this is actually something I might be able to do. It's late in the year, so it's usually people's last big convention of the year. So if you kind of have it on the calendar, it is something to plan for. And it is one of those things where I'm like, I could see myself more easy in New York than I can in San Diego. And that's not to say like one's better than the other. I'm like, you know what? It's closer by proximity, and there are a certain number of people like, okay, I could guarantee to see that. But yeah, as soon as you're saying it, going like, oh man, Adam's going again. Man, I am so jealous. Well, it's almost like the Philly non-sport show, kind of the same way, where it's kind of in that neck of the woods, and these are two shows that are definitely on my bucket list, just because you're right. We're going there for mainly a few things. There's all the stuff that's wrapped around it, but at the end of the day, it's a reason why when I am at the National and I put on their Topps, take a card, give a card, I put a Star Wars card up there, because I'm like, someone's going to go, whoa, all these like rando baseball cards and one Boba Fett, like, yes. So that I feel my mission is complete, and I feel your mission also is complete as well.
So funny enough, the Topps booth did not have that this year. In the past, like I said, they've had a lot more. They used to have artists come. They would have, like Darren Pepe in the past would go and he would do sketches and autographs. Like they didn't do any of that this year, but they in the past have had that. Give a card, take a card. I would always leave a Garbage Chute Droid card on that.
Yes, there you go.
Which is really funny. But yeah, it's yeah. I mean, if it's something you can do, it's great. Philly show is something I want to do. I want to get a table at the Philly show. Mm-hmm. I think that's something. It's a couple-hour drive for me, so it's not like, oh, we'll just make a day trip out of it. But with I have enough Star Wars cards, enough Garbage Chute Kit cards, and my Garbage Chute Droids cards. I would love to get a table. I know a lot of the artists who go to that, and a lot of just the customers as well who will drive up to that. One of these days, and maybe I'll meet you there. Maybe the two of us one year will find a way that we'll get there at the same time.
There we go. All right, we're going to talk to you in a couple, 3 weeks. We have a full show with you to talk about the latest set of Garbage Chute Droids. But until then, where can people find you online, Adam?
Best bet is really just Instagram and Facebook at Garbage Chute Droids. You can go to garbagechutegdroids.com. It's a link tree that has all of my links out there. If you want to join my Facebook group at the Garbage Chute Droids fan club, where we do giveaways, just a lot more engaged with the community. Just a lot of the ways that people who have been collecting for years or just new collectors can get out there and see what we have to offer. But really, just if you have any questions, hit me up. I'm Garbage Chute Droids, Facebook, Instagram. Just send me a DM. Say, hey, I heard you on the podcast, or I'd love to know more. I'm happy to chat.
Adam, thank you so much for being on. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more of our conversation on Stephane Leonardi and his work on Topps Chrome. We'll be right back.
Hey, folks, this is Ro from the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast, where it's always sunny on Scarif, and you are listening to the Rebel Base Card podcast. Great pull, kid.
I was kind of curious about the neighborhood, your neighborhood, as you kind of go down, as you go past Notre Dame down, I guess, east on the Seine. What is your neighborhood like?
Well, it's pretty, it's not as dense as the center of Paris, which is good because it's very, family oriented. You have a lot of families around here. It's mostly quiet, which is good. I would not say it's like a village, to be honest, but it's a less fast-paced than the center of Paris. So it's really a nice neighborhood overall. And it's quite near to the park, the Bois de Vincennes, which is a huge park. And it's you have a lot of green stuff around. So that's really, a good place to hang around and just to be honest. So that's really nice.
Did you grow up there or somewhere else?
No. I didn't grow up in Paris. I lived in the suburb mainly. But I'm a Parisian for 25 years. So yeah, it's been a while.
Oh, wow. I'm assuming, like anything else, that does Paris draw you as for job opportunities or just for, what is the draw? Like any big city, I guess, would be a draw for someone who's much younger, just because a lot of things are happening there. But
the thing is, it's a little bit I would say specific, I don't know, to France, but it's very centralized. So Paris is like a huge magnet for a lot of things. Paris is the capital, of course, the administrative part, the economic, part, everything is there. If you want to, let's say, start a career, at some point you have to go through Paris. And then you can go, in the countryside, to Bordeaux, to Marseille, to any other country, cities. But the thing is that at some point, you may have to go through Paris. And when you go to the countryside and you meet a lot of people, they say, hey, you're from Paris, right? And I say, yeah, of course. I lived in Paris for 5 years, 10 years, blah, blah, blah. So it's pretty common. But it's a good thing and a bad thing because it's attracting so many people and so, let's say, centralized that there's no, if we're talking about job opportunities, for instance, it's really hard to find a job, let's say, outside of Paris. You have to fight for it. There's not that many job openings. The pay will be lower, all this kind of thing, but your quality of life may be greatly improved. So it's just, different things, but Paris, it's just very, very centralized. Yeah, France is very centralized for that.
Is it something where you traveled to there maybe as a child or saw it, before you moved there? I'm kind of curious your relationship with it before you decided to settle in.
Well, it was mostly for my career, to be honest. When I just started, after the university, the easiest and most effective way to start your career was to work in Paris or around Paris. And I started from there. And again, as I was living in the suburb when I was a kid with my parents, they're still living there. It's like being, let's say, a Parisian in a way. Because you go there, once in a while. So yeah, I'm not someone who really lived in the countryside. For instance, my wife is coming from the east of France, so she has a more history and more background there. So it's different, but she doesn't feel like she's a Parisian, of course, but she has some roots, elsewhere. So that's different. But for me, it's a kind of a mixed bag because I lived in Paris or in the suburb, but I also lived a lot internationally because I lived in Portugal, in Brazil, in Mexico when I was a kid. So I spent a couple of years there. And so I don't feel like being, after 25 years, I don't feel like being a Parisian, That's very odd.
What did your folks do that you moved around a little bit?
Oh, my father he's now retired. He was working in the oil drilling industry.
Okay.
And he was managing some project in, oil platforms, so all around the world. So from time to time, he had some long missions or long assignments. I'm not talking months, but years. And at some point, the family it was better to all together to come and join him. So we did that when he was in Portugal for a year. That's as long as I can remember. I was very little. And then Brazil for a year and a half, and then Mexico for 3 years. So that was funny. And I was all I'm saying is before the age of 10. So I was pretty young.
But still had to do some schooling, of course.
Yes, of course.
So how did they set that up? Would there be kind of communities of folks that were kind of from about the same area, or did they have to enroll you in some local schools? How'd that work?
Yeah, well, for Mexico, it was different. It was a French-Mexican school, so it was not an issue. But before that, I think it was like my mom basically was, teaching her something like that. It's very sketchy because I was very little. So,
Of course.
Well, that was funny.
How big is the family, if you don't mind me asking?
I have a sister, which is 3 years older than me, and yeah, that's it.
So of that, when you're getting into sort of a new place, obviously you're still pretty young, but what are you trying to do to kind of keep yourself, occupied, or, I'm assuming you're having to learn maybe a little bit of the language, unless it's where you were was completely kind of one area. But I'm kind of curious, what do you kind of do to, like, oh, we're here now. All right, what am I going to do with myself? Because as a kid, you're kind of looking for stuff to do.
Yeah. Well, again, Portugal, Brazil, I have some flashes, some memories, and that's it, because I was so little. But for Mexico, it was different. I was already at school, and I was mostly hanging out with French-speaking people. So, and I didn't want to learn Spanish. So I was, like having like I don't know, it was hard for me to really get into the culture or something. I was, putting that aside. Yeah, I mean, it was still a very nice period of my life. But again, it was like being in France or in a different country. I don't know. It's kind of hard, actually.
So it must have been kind of nice when you settled back into France and kind of got more, felt like, all right. Or is it just that your parents just didn't have to keep moving?
Well, at some point they had to go back to France, because it was like we were going back and forth. Actually, it was not, when I say 3 years, I were maybe doing a part of the of my school in France and the other part in Mexico. Then the second year, half and half, or the full year. Again, very sketchy for me, because it was like a long period, but it's not actually. So it was nice. Yes. At some point, it was too long to. I mean, we didn't want to stay there, so at some point you have to go back to France. And then that was the last, I mean, let's say, trip that we have to make. So we settled in France for good after that.
When was about what time was this?
It was it was from 77 to 80.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'm old. I don't look old, I know. But...
You don't know. Well, still hair on top of the head. That's
and it's funny because most of the time when I recall this period, and I'm saying this because I attended a card show last week as a guest artist, which was funny, and I was interviewed as well. And someone told me, "What was your first memory when you collected Star Wars cards?" And I told him that actually when I was in Mexico, after school, there was always some setups, people, selling candies or a bag of chips and some trading cards just after school. And I remember this guy having like a layout with all the packs. It was so shiny, blue vivid or red color. It was very eye-catching, and I was like, that's interesting. And I bought 1 pack, 2 pack. And actually it was like, something that I used to buy after school, and I made this huge stack of Star Wars cards. I think from the first movie, and it was still in 78 or 79, and I think it was from the first movie because it was the blue Starfield design. And at that time, I haven't seen that movie. You have to consider that. And for me, it was like, okay, I didn't know what it was like, but the imagery was so impressive. And I was like, wow. And I kept, collecting them and having this huge stack of cards. And I did that for quite a while, I think, because I had this, stack this high, to be honest.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And actually, there was some gum inside as well. So it was the Spanish, language cards. So that I can remember. And now when we had to get back to France, we had to move all our stuff, to pack everything. And I don't know why. And I swear to God, I don't know what went through my head at the time. I left the cards.
Oh, no.
In the closet. Oh. And I remember it very, precisely, like, no, I won't take them. Why? I don't know. And from that moment, I don't know, something was left, there was no closure in a way, and I got back, two cards later on. But I mean, what happened?
For those long-time listeners of this podcast, this is a payoff that was years in the making, because we have to go back to episode 17 when we talked about the Mexican Star Wars cards. And I would say this is one of the longest payoffs in this podcast's history, because of it was hard to get them. They only packed a couple, 3 per pack. There was a lot that got lost. You'll usually find them water damaged. It's rare to find them in really good shape. I have just like maybe one of them that I was able to scratch. So the hard part is telling you that had you as a child made that decision, you could have probably put yourself through some additional art school with selling those off if you had kept them in good shape. But that's what's fascinating. And like I said, even getting into this, finding out some of the stories, I think once you start kind of collecting, you especially since, if you're US centric and you start really kind of getting serious into collecting, you'll find that there are these international variants, especially of the 1977s, where you find, them in England, in Ireland, in Australia, New Zealand, Canada. And it's always funny to find these, and it makes it hard, because if you're a completist, you'll be like, I can never get all these because there's so many different ones. But the fun thing, Argentina, which had a run, but they were all kind of, I think, labeled the same. But it's just one of those where it's like, it shows you how big of a impact that movie had. The fact that so many places wanted to get in on this, and if you see a lot of the international collectibles and so on, it makes it so much fun. But that at least does kind of tell me that as a kid, maybe even I don't know what this movie is about, having these scenes on a card. And I think also something today, even where in the age of streaming and Disney Plus, where you can fire up Star Wars at will, at the time, these images on these cards leave a lasting memory, because especially, when it went off the theaters, you didn't see it on TV for years afterwards. They were just a great source to kind of go back to, and then you start thinking like, your imagination really takes over. I'm glad you at least had a chance to collect them as a kid, and I'm glad they kind of caught your eye, because there's just something about those blue ones that just really, chef's kiss.
Yeah, it's iconic. And the thing is, I managed, I think 15 years ago, to grab 3 packs on eBay. So I still have them nicely stored. And I'm like, thank God, I managed to get a piece of my childhood somewhere. So it's really, it was really the first exposure to Star Wars through cards. And I don't know, it took me a couple of years before getting to know the movies and seeing some books perhaps. But later on, when I came back to France, I remember going to see Return of the Jedi at the movies. But before that, I don't know, perhaps I've seen the other 2 first movies, but where I don't remember, but it doesn't matter. It was, already in my imagination, in my brain, and all this imagery, because it was so, the design, the character, what I was looking at, it's like, who did that? It was amazing. I don't know what the story was, but perhaps this story of Jedi Knights with aliens in a far distant planet. It was, wow. I haven't seen the movie, but it was so promising,
Well, and just seeing, the effects, and, and what's nice now is when you go back and you can, now we're so familiar with a lot of the matte paintings that Ralph McQuarrie and company did, where you can now kind of look. But back then, it's like, it was almost indistinguishable. You really couldn't tell. Like, for example, even when you look at Tatooine, Jabba's palace, when the droids are going to Jabba's palace and Return of the Jedi, and you see that in the back, and you clearly they are on in a desert or in a in a sand type setting, and they just kind of lay that back on so seamlessly. Now you take it for granted because of CG and digital effects and so forth, but back then it just seemed like it was just really nice. I mean, just gorgeous, and it just added to it, and that's what. And not too many other films were able to pull that off.
Yeah, and I think it was the time where it's perhaps on an unconscious level, I started, to nurture your imagination and your design, and I was starting, to draw, to illustrate things, and all this imagery, all this design were, fueling what I was drawing, basically. So, and I didn't know. Again, it was like very unconscious, like you drawing stuff and like perhaps it's remind me of a prop droid. Oh yeah, correct. Blah blah blah. You're drawing stuff and you don't clearly know where you go, but it's start to grow on you.
Well, does drawing come naturally to you, or is it something you really had to kind of work at, but had that passion to do so?
As far as I can remember, I've always drawn. As far as I can remember, it was always, something very instinctive to grab a piece of paper or to draw stuff, like from the very beginning. And this is why my parents are telling me when I was very little. But I really, drawing was really something that I really wanted to do. Like, there was nothing else. But as time went by, I had to make other decisions and to leave that aside, and got back to it recently. So yeah, but it's had always been a part of me. Yeah.
So was that something that your family was encouraging about, or was just something more of a curiosity to them?
It was a curiosity, when you are. I'm a parent, so sometimes you feel proud that your kid is doing stuff that it's very impressive, but you don't necessarily want him or her to pursue that career, right? So I think it was pretty much the same for my parents. When at some point I was really into, illustration, comics. When I say comics, French comics. The comic scene in Europe, it's mostly French and Belgium, so it's the most of it. So at that time, I was really into it, and I was like, oh gosh, this is really what I want to do. I want to be a French comic book artist. Like, it was really what I wanted to do. So the next step for me was to convince my parents to go to art school and to finance that, right? So it was not an easy discussion, to be honest. And I knew from the start that all my, arguments were, not reaching the right target. So it was really, really hard. So basically, they told me, yeah, that's fine. You can draw whenever you want, whatever you want. But later, when you have a proper job, after your job, at night, whatever. But first, get your degree, get a job, and then we'll talk. So, okay.
What did they want you to be?
They wanted not to have to worry about, finance or having a kid, struggling to make ends meet or stuff like that. So I think from their perspective, it was something that pursuing an art career was, you're going to starve basically and to, chase money all the time. So not something that is very glamorous. And I can understand them, to be honest. But I was disappointed, and I understood what we were saying in the same time. So, okay, so I was also pretty good in my studies. I went through some business studies and had my degree, and then moved on. But from that time on, the art part was put under the carpet, basically. It's something that I knew was there, but it was not the proper time to get back to it, at least seriously. So I was sketching here and there from time to time. People were saying, you're very good, I was like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. So I was, imagining myself being a great artist. And in my mind, I had so many things I wanted to draw, but couldn't or wouldn't have the courage or the time or whatever reasons to really get into it and to put the hours and, to be serious about it. And that changed basically 4 years ago when the pandemic was there. I had, some issue at work, let's say. And it was like a revelation. I said, okay, I want to get back to drawing, to illustrating, because this is what really drives me. And I got serious about it and got back to it. Really, like, this is what I want to do. So I've been pursuing this for the last 4 years now. So I set a lot of things into motion and it's going good, I would say. So I'm pretty happy about it and grateful. But I mean, it's just for me, it's just the start. It's like a new life has begun, basically.
Well, and something that kind of is incredibly impressive is the fact that, you're talking a couple different markets. It's like, I did have a chance when we were over there. I was kind of looking and I forget which comic shop it was. For part of me, because it was over, we stayed over in the Latin Quarter, and I want to say there's a comic shop. Is it Atlas?
You have a lot in the Latin Quarter. You have a lot of them.
But you kind of like, you're curious about like what's over there. But I think there's still a lot of independent books. Sometimes I'll go to a place and you'll see a lot of the U.S. stuff, and you're like, oh, you're almost slightly disappointed. But how did you first, decide to? Were you starting at like what did you start trying to sketch, and what was there going? Oh yes, I want to try to do that, because we will be getting into your work, because you were one of the artists on the 2024 Chrome. That wasn't your first Star Wars set. You've done a few since around since after the pandemic started. But I am kind of curious, when you started to kind of get back in, what were you looking to kind of produce? What size work? What type of medium, etc.?
Actually, it was like pages of, let's say, comic books, like a large size, telling stories, short ones mainly, in black and white. And I was really, really, and mostly it was set in a sci-fi environment, let's say. Like a mix of, sci-fi, and I was really very influenced by the Twilight Zone, the whole series, the black and white series. For me, it's the best series ever. I mean, incredible writing. And this is the type of, stories I was making with, with a plot twist, especially at the end, and things like that. It was really bad. Huh? I was just, sketching and trying to produce these stories. And again, I was influenced by. There's also another artist that I really admire. He's passed, unfortunately. It's Moebius. I don't know if you know him.
Not Moebius. As familiar, but I've heard the name before.
His work has been published by Marvel during the 80s and 90s. In collected editions, but he has a major influence on the French comic scene and internationally, of course. He worked on Tron, for example, the movie, concept artist for The Abyss or other movies, but more than that, he has a style that is so incredible, and for me, it was like the best artist ever. So all this influence, was fueling my, let's say, desire to produce, this kind of comics and short stories. But I quickly, let's say, stopped doing that, because telling stories, drawing comic book style stories, it's really, let's say, a very hard labor. What I mean by that is not only you are drawing, but you are also telling stories. And I think it's really hard to be both a good, let's say, writer, someone that tells good stories, and at the same time that put them into motion and draw them. And I think when you want to accumulate both of those skills, it's really, really hard. And at some point I was like, okay, I'm not perhaps very good at telling stories. Perhaps I should carry on with the drawing part. And then I think it slowly moved from being, let's say, a comic book artist, meaning sequential art, and rather go into the illustration part, like having a drawing that tells a story, basically. But it's not you know what I mean? It's not a story per se.
And then what was some of the first work that you were able to get either, I would say, published or to get money from, or to get, kind of that professional foot in the door, as it were?
Actually, it was not that long ago. It was only 2 years ago, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I entered 4 years ago, I get back into the drawing board, sketching, drawing, illustrating, and I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. So to be honest, I was sketching a lot every day. It was something that was really important for me. And after time went by, I was like saying, okay, what should be the main approach if I want to get published, if I want to get more exposure and so on. And trading cards has always been, let's say, a good part of my collecting habits, I would say. And I was saying, Star Wars, that's something I would like to do, because I've seen all the artists, contributing with sketch cards.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be arrogant or something, but at that point I was saying, okay, I think I can do this. This is something that is, reachable. I can work hard, try to put my foot in the door, submit a portfolio, and see what happens. It was not from one day to another, but it was slowly, building in my mind. And I was saying, okay, what should I do to do that? So I started to get more into, the sketch card community, the artists, people collecting Star Wars as a whole, and trading cards in particular. And it's a great community, by the way. And I went to Star Wars Celebration in Chicago in 2019. It was, I spent just 2 days there, and it was incredible. And I said, from now on, every Star Wars Celebration, that no matter where is it on the globe, I will be there. So the next one was in Anaheim,
mm-hmm.
in California. So I said, okay, I will go there, but I need a plan. And I'm going to bring some swag with me. What I mean by that, I'm going to produce some trading cards with my art on it, some Star Wars art, and having, the vintage design, do a mock-up, blah, 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 something that I can hand it over to people, when I'm at the convention, as a, to start a conversation or whatever. And it started from there, actually. And I met some other artists there, sketch card artists, and I was, showing my stuff, say, hey, can you give me some feedback? Do you think I have what it takes to be a sketch card artist for Topps, for Star Wars? And I met a guy who was already actually at the Artist Alley at that time, Alex Mines, an English guy. He looked at my stuff and said, wow, I think you have the skills. You should go for it. And I say, wow, okay. I have like a kind of a seal of approval. I can carry on and try to submit my stuff, which I did. And actually, I said to myself, okay, he told me, you can do it, you have the skills, but be patient. You will submit your stuff, but they're not going to respond right away. It's going to take time. So be patient. That was really the main message. I say, okay, I will do that. I find the right place to submit my stuff. And then I waited. And I followed up and again and again and again, month after month. 3 months after, 3 months after, 4 months, nothing, no message. And I was like, okay, it's going to take time, he told me. So I was aware. And I said, after a year, if nothing's happened, I will move on, start something else. I will still, drawing, illustrating, but not for Star Wars, obviously. And after 10 months, I get a response, an answer saying, "Hey, Stefan, would you like to be invited for this brand new set?" And I was like, "Thank God." It started like that, actually. So it was in early 2023.
What set was it?
Actually, it was for the Obi-Wan Kenobi set, but it was then cancelled. Right after, it was a little bit complicated because we initiated the invite for all of many artists and then cancelled everything up. I know some artists produced some stuff, some other didn't. Well, it was a mess, but anyway, I didn't contribute to this one. But a few weeks later, I was invited to my first set, which was Chrome 2023.
Okay.
To be honest, it was, great. Before that, at the same time, my very first test was for RR Park cards for Ultraman.
Okay.
Ultraman Series 3. And the thing is, I produced the card right before Star Wars. It was my very first gig, let's say. But the set, which was funded on Kickstarter, is not going to ship to customer this month, so 2 years from now. It took almost 2 years to get to the people that bought it. So that's incredible. But and then Ultraman, and then I moved to Star Wars Chrome 2023, and I had to produce something like 40 cards in just a week. That was the deadline. I never had such a deadline.
Wait a minute, what was the deadline?
1 week.
Oh my goodness.
Just a week.
40 cards in a
week. I got the
week.
card very late, actually. Yeah, the blanks arrived very, very late. And time to ship it back, it was, let's say, 8 days or something like that. And I had 40 cards to produce. And I was, to be honest, like a trial by fire. You have to really produce and to put you in the mood. And it was hard, but a good, let's say, lesson to get, you commit to something, you're freelancing, you have to produce the best, go for it. Do what you have to do, and no matter what. So it was hard. I'm proud of it because it was my first set, but it's not to the standard of what I'm producing, of course, right now, but because I had to really make up for the time, and it was really, really difficult. So Chrome 2023 was the first one, and then other followed a couple of weeks after. So I was really, let's say, in motion.
Boy, it is interesting when you look back, if you compare and the Chrome 2023 to say Finest, right? Chrome 2023, you're going from they're essentially, characters on white background, and
because I didn't have the time to do the background.
Although, with there's the one with Yoda, and you see sort of you have a background there, the Grogu. But you start to see him like the composition's really good, and sort of on the one hand you could say, yes, I didn't really get a chance to do too much on the background, but I do love the fact that with that it really kind of brings them to focus, and you really focus on the detail on there. And I would say, for 8 days it's amazing. And
to be honest, it was the hardest. I won't do that again, to be honest.
Yeah, we're not encouraging to say, yeah, he's done it before. But then you move into Finest, where you've got some more colored backgrounds. You got some great subjects in here.
I have more time.
But yeah, I'm sure that also, I've talked to a lot of artists, and especially when they're moving to such a small 2.5 by 3.5, and you've got this small, I'm sure from the time of those two sets, you went from probably doing it wherever you could do it, whenever you could do it. I am kind of curious in that second, and then you go into masterwork. Did you kind of have to maybe change your studio or wherever you're doing it to kind of better help you finish and get your process down, however you're doing it, whether you're doing an assembly line, whether you're doing all your sketches and your inks? Did the studio or your area change at all in these, or were you just kind of like, no, this is where my place is?
Well, the first set was, like, as I said, very brutal, so it was pretty new for me. So I had not a lot of time to think about what I was doing basically. But the second one, I said, okay, I have more time, so I have to have a more industrial approach to it. So I've already, tried to work on some references before. So everything was planned basically all in advance. So I knew which character or which scene or which location to use, which saves a lot of time, of course. And after that, I didn't change much actually, because I'm also always doing one card at a time, not having like a multi-card approach. I know some artists do that. I can't. I have to really focus on one thing and then move on. So I did that for Finest, and then I did the same for Masterwork, which I had more time than the previous one, so that was good. And I think overall, and this is what I think what I learned so far is the more time you have, the better, for sure, really, because you don't feel the pressure. And I think the way I'm putting the lines or the energy that I'm putting in what I'm drawing is different. So being more relaxed, I think you produce overall better stuff, for sure. That's for me obvious. That said, I think it's always good to put yourself into, let's say, a good constraint, meaning that you have not a lot of time to produce the output that you commit to. So it's always good to put yourself in this kind of situation, because you can then, be more comfortable when you have more time and you know where you will put your time or your energy. And this is the case right now, where, thank God, we have more time to produce our cards. So I know roughly how long it's going to take me. So I can perhaps commit to more stuff. It's really good. You have to go through this, let's say, difficult period where it's really you're under the gun and you have to really produce in a lot of cards in a very short period. But I think it's for the better. You learn a lot by that.
What goes into some of the decisions as far as the subjects you are going to do? I mean, let's say you're signing up for 40. How do you kind of choose? Let's say if it wasn't for like a Obi-Wan Kenobi, where obviously I'm going to be having to throw in characters. How do you kind of choose? And then how is the communication between you and the art director as far as, either maybe you're bouncing off ideas, or they say, hey, submit these, but not this, and this. What goes into some of the decision making?
Well, it's pretty straightforward, because you are given a set of, let's say, restrictions. That there are some scenes or characters that you cannot draw, or draw in certain situations. So it's very clear from the start. After that, it's really your, let's say, natural attraction to some movies or TV series or characters or whatever, which is good, because, there's such a variety of, it's the Star Wars universe so huge and so vast that you can pick up whatever you want. For me, I'm a sucker for the original trilogy, so for that, the Cantina aliens, the iconic characters, the droids, the aliens. That's perfect. I love that. So I would sometimes more try to focus on that, but I also like to, have a more, let's say, movie-driven approach. For instance, from the last set that is not yet out, I was really, really focused on the prequels. So you have Phantom Menace, you have Revenge of the Sith, and Attack of the Clone, and it's really heavy. Like, I try to find some obscure aliens or characters or stuff like that. And it was a lot of fun just to put yourself into this kind of, let's say, challenge, because the thing with Star Wars, and so far I think I've produced, again, a lot of the sets are not yet out, but I've produced something around 700 cards in 2 years.
Wow.
Just for Star Wars. So the thing is that you're not going to get bored, but you want to put some variety and to make it fresh. You're not going to draw Boba Fett a zillion times. You have to move to other characters or other situations that keep it fresh for you, of course, but also for the collectors. And this is something that is really, right from the start. When I said having more time to produce your sketch card is a good thing because you produce a better quality. And I'm always thinking of the person that's going to open a pack, to put a lot of money in buying a box, and is going to, to rip a pack, pull up a sketch card, and he goes like, not very good. Because what I say by that is that sometimes you are under a lot of constraints, you don't have time to produce, let's say, high quality, and that's totally understandable, but I really want to produce the best quality that you can get from a collector's perspective. That's very important because I was a collector myself before that. Not so much these days, but because I'm on the other side, but it's very important to get to produce the best stuff ever, just to put a smile on someone's face when you will read the pack and say, wow, what is it? It's a sketch card. Wow, it's an illustration. It's a one-of-one. My gosh, blah, blah, blah. That's for me, that's the goal, the main goal.
Yeah, and just looking at some of the sketches for the 2024 Chrome, I'm kind of drawn into, you have the bounty hunter from Empire Strikes Back, and I'm just thinking it's not, is it not Zuckuss, but it's...
Forlum.
Where you have, I love the detail in the eyes where we have kind of a couple different shades of green. But on the one hand, I can see in some of the creatures in the cantina, some of the shading, some of the little lighting. But then you have this nice shot, far away shot of a rider on a bantha, which is kind of cool. And you have a nice Jawa sand crawler, which, you have that really nice brown, reddish brown against that blue sky, and then right next to it, as I'm just kind of looking, you have that shot of Han Solo and Carbonite. So there's scenes here that you can see, but like you said, you can really tell that the time going into this, it's one thing, and I'm sure even for you, it's probably hard sometimes to let them go because you gotta get done, and then all right, scrape them all back up, put them in a box, and send them off, and you'll probably never see them again.
Well, I'm okay with that because I'm more excited to see where my stuff will end up than rather to keep them, actually. Because I know that, to be honest, you said a card of Han Solo in Carbonite. I can do one right now just for me if I want.
Fair enough.
That's not an issue. But I like this card, for instance. And I'm curious to know where it will end up in a pack, or I will have no news at all. It will end up in a break on whatnot or whatever. I don't know. That's the fun part. It will end up in any part of the globe, in China, in the US, in France, whatever. That's really the fun part.
Have you seen any of yours get pulled, or has anyone tagged you?
Yes, I'm keeping track of all this because it's so fun. So I try to have this, let's say, secret network of spies, telling me, hey, I saw your sketch card, getting pulled in a whatnot break. Here's the link, or there's this guy on Instagram account that is showing your card, blah, blah, blah. So I'm trying to collect as much as I can. So for me, it's very interesting just to see what is publicly displayed, because obviously a lot is not displayed. People are perhaps opening up packs, seeing a sketch card for the first time and throw it away. Who knows? But I'm keeping track of that just to see the ratio over time, saying, okay, I know that, for instance, on Chrome 2023, I didn't make a lot. I have 40 cards in the set, but I think half of them have been somehow pulled, from what I know. Perhaps it's more, I don't know. But it's very interesting to keep track of that, to see how it's, circulating, and I find this fascinating, to be honest.
You said you were a recent guest at a card show. You know, this kind of takes it into sort of the next step where you go from, you know, I'm at home producing these cards, or I'm seeing them ripped online, to now I'm going to shows and I'm now a featured artist, or I'm an artist alley. How does that feel, and how are things how's it gone for you as far as that's concerned?
For what you said is very interesting, because being an artist, most of the time you're on your drawing board alone, producing stuff. You get the feedback mostly online, just as I said, checking on Instagram, on social media, or eBay or whatnot, just to see what has been pulled. But it's always nice to see all the feedback, but getting to meet people is the most, I would say, satisfying part. So that was always the plan for me, to at some point having a table somewhere in a convention in France for a start. And I had some plan to do that actually next year, but I had the opportunity to go to a card show actually way before that. So I was a little bit caught by surprise, and I said, okay, I had this opportunity. Okay, let's do this. It will be interesting for me as a let's say an experiment, because I don't know what to expect. I had to set my table and to see how I can possibly explain, because you have to understand that we're talking about the French market. I mean, the trading card scene is really taking off in France, to be honest, and over Europe, because I think the pandemic has played a lot of, I had a good influence on that. And Topps mainly has been very, very, not let's say aggressive, but more vocal and more and pushing for products in France and in Europe. And so it's not to the point where it is in the US, for sure. Definitely not, but it's really picking up. So that's very, very encouraging. So I had this opportunity. I met the people that were wearing the show, say, hey, come on, I can get you a table and see how it goes. So I said, okay, fine, let's do this. And it was just a day, not let's say a full weekend, just a full day. And for me, it was very interesting, because when you are a sketch card artist, and mainly for Star Wars, you're producing stuff that will end up in packs. So you don't have anything to sell except your artist proof or artist returns cards. And I managed to keep only 8 so far. I had more in the past, but they were sold. So if I want to show people what I'm producing, it's either I print, let's say, a full list of my cards that I've been producing so far, and it just, let's say, as a display, and that's it. I can show my artist returns card, and that's it, basically. So it's really hard also to, and you have to educate a lot of people about the sketch card world, because it's not something that is, let's say, common for French card collectors. They are really into sports, soccer, basketball, NBA, and that's it, mostly. And you have Pokemon, of course. And Star Wars is something like an oddity, but again, Topps is really pushing that. And people were coming to my table, and I decided, okay, how can I'm going to speak to those people to let them know about what the sketch card community is, what Star Wars is all about, blah, blah, blah. Fine. But what can I do to, make things interesting, right? Because I draw stuff, but I cannot sell my AP because I only have 8 left, and I really want to keep those, to the last minute. And I said, okay, let's do perhaps something that can be interesting. I cannot draw, let's say, Star Wars stuff on a blank and sell them. Basically, it's something that is not allowed, of course. That I totally understand it. So I said, okay, what if I do the same thing, sketching Star Wars character, but for free. What I mean by that, just for free, just you come up to my table and you have to, and I managed to get like an Instagram challenge. So if you subscribe to my Instagram account, like a post, comment, share, and record the post, you are granted a free sketch card. So that was the approach basically, and I did pretty well. So I did those sketches, like 5 or 10 minutes, quick ones on my personal blank card, and I gave them to the people actually, and it was really a very fun experience just so people can spend the day and come back home with a free sketch card of an artist they didn't know was working on Star Wars, and it was very, very interesting because also you have to consider, and this is something that I've tried to find some information, but I'm the only French artist working on Star Wars for Topps at the moment. The only one. I think there were some people in the past, but I'm saying like 10 years ago, that work on some sets, but that's about it. So I'm the only one active at the moment. There are other European artists in Portugal, in the UK, of course, in Belgium. I think you have other people in India, of course, in Asia, and most of it are in the US. But for France, I'm the only one. So that's a very, let's say, interesting story to tell. Like, hey guys, I'm the only one. Bonjour.
Well, and it's interesting too because when you go to these, when you go to shows and you go into Artist Alley, the trick is to have a different range of. I've seen some people do everything from buttons to like other type sketches, or they do prints, and it does take a little while if you're going to get in that game to kind of get up the volume of product. And to have different range, because some people say, hey, if you want a copy of this very nice print I did, but I can have something up here that brings in a lot of money, but I can also have little $2, $5, $10 items that if someone comes up and they say, oh, I like that, but obviously, like you said, with the APs, I'm like, well, I got 8 in a can, and once they're done, they're done. But it's also, what type of show is it? You might be at a show where it's like, wow, that's not a good market for something like that. Like, yes, I could definitely charge less, but that kind of defeats the purpose of having them to begin with, But also, I think what's got to be tough is, in a growing market, it's tough enough to get these cards in the U.S. to expose some folks to this type of thing, and kind of like, what do I have to do? Where do I have to, it's also got to be tough because I think the barrier of entry, even though it's gotten more popular, is still pretty tough in some markets.
It is, yeah. I think the very first, this show was really about educate people and to really, for me, to gain more exposure. I didn't want to sell, basically. It was just a way of, saying, hey, hi, guys, I'm French. Well, I'm French. We're all French. But, I'm an artist working on sketch cards for Star Wars for Topps. Hey, did you know that? Oh, no, I didn't know. What is it? How does it work? And it's funny because most of the time, I try to tell people that it's unique piece of artwork. People don't get it. Like, hey, but how do they produce? How many copies do they make? And like, no, it's not a copy of my work into a base card. It's just a unique illustration. It's a sketch card. It's a one of one. It's unique. It's what I'm drawing right now. And people are not really getting it most of the time. So you have to educate a lot of people on that. But it's growing really fast. There is this card show because it's in Lille in the north of France. And you have the largest one will be in Paris in May, next May, and I will be there for sure. So it's a bigger one for sure. So it's going to be interesting.
Oh. And and that's the thing. Also, it's like in a place like Paris where you can go to a lot of museums, and you have that. It's it's just all around you. It almost feels like you could take it for granted that you have work from the masters that is literally down the road. If I want to go and get, even if, all right, I have to fight with some tourists to kind of see it, it's still probably something that, I could go back to again. I think as my wife and I have been kind of talking like, I need to spend some time in the Musée d'Orsay again, because unlike, say, in the Louvre, where the Mona Lisa you can see from way over there behind, obviously, you go in the Musée d'Orsay and like there's a Van Gogh that's literally right in front of me. I could, if I wanted it to be the last time, reach out and touch it. But if I just wanted to be there, you're right there. And, these are pieces of art that you have seen over and over, whether it's online or in books or on TV or something like that. But when it's right in front of you and you can see the textures that are used and the colors, and, for me, it was very emotional because it's just like, this is it. And, the last person to have anything to do with that was the actual artists themselves. The whole city is, inspiring because just walk along any street. It doesn't matter. Someone asked me, what's your favorite part of Paris? I'm like, it's Paris. You're there. You see it. Everything looks like it comes right from a painting or a sketch and things like that. And it's all you can do just to break out a napkin and start going to town. But it's fun because I'm curious about, how an area like France, how they, we're into cards, but how do other people get into cards? What do they have access to? What can they get? How far are they going to go out? Is it local stuff, or do they really go after, what other stuff? So it's fun because you see more and more of it getting out there, but at the same time, it, for me, is a lot of curious, the curious nature of like, what's out there, what, just looking at the graffiti or all that. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm babbling on, but those are the things that even now it's been 5-6 years. It's still, you can still remember a lot of it, and you can still like just the impact of it. And even in your your suburb, just some great things happen.
And Paris is I think being a Parisian, I took for granted, that I'm living in a nice city or a very, let's say, attractive city. The thing is, during this summer for the Olympics, because I was there all the summer, I really understood the attractiveness of the city and how beautiful it was. Like it was like seeing something new again. Like I knew Paris, of course. I know the Eiffel Tower, all the sites and the landmarks and everything. But having this spotlight with all the tournaments, all the sports and everything, it was wow, amazing. Like I wish. I mean, this kind of city in this environment was the best. I haven't seen something like that, and it's really great to see.
You do say that you kind of have cut down a little bit on your collection, but what are some of your favorite things? And if they're Star Wars, great. If not, but I am kind of curious. Everybody has space limitations, but what are some of the things you go, I have to have that, and it has to be up there? I did see, as I kind of look at the apartment before, like I said, it looked like a great zoom background, but I do see a couple things poking here or there that look very familiar if you're fond of a droid or two. But what are some of the things that you enjoy? As he pulls out, he's pulling out a binder that has the original Topps. Oh, there we go. Oh, he's got the blues. He's got them in a binder. They look fantastic.
Now, I'm still when I say I'm not collecting that much these days, it's just that I enjoy all the releases that we have seen so far for the past 2 years. And I'm buying just one box of each of the series I'm in at the moment. And then I don't not intend to open it. So just, for the sake of having it, for my own satisfaction, I would say. For the rest, I'm not, looking after a specific card or stuff like that. It's more like the opportunity of the moment. For instance, I'm really into the vintage stuff. So I have all the base cards for the 5 series.
Yes, 5 series for 1977, 78.
Yeah. and all I'm missing is the stickers set. So if by any chance sometimes I end up having a good deal or whatever, I will take it. But I'm not, trying to find it absolutely just to finish my collection. It's really more a casual approach, like, okay, if I see it, I will take it for a good price, I would say. But other than that, I'm not, spending that much money on cards. Because again, being now on the other side, it's a different story. It's strange to tell, but I enjoy people, breaking boxes, ripping packs, and seeing stuff, and I'm really enjoying it. But for me, it's more fun to see that rather than me buying stuff to open it for myself. I don't know if it makes sense, but again, if the joy of buying a box and ripping packs is unmatched. I love it. I will still love it.
One of the things I love about a sealed box is it's almost the most, it's the most efficient way to have that number of cards at one place. It's like having a sealed box. You don't have to worry about like, I'd have to put them in a binder. It's like, it's there. I have some sealed boxes and there's some stuff I'm not going to open it because if I do, then it'll be all over the place. It'll be in piles of this. But when it's like this and you see its original packaging, and sometimes even the packaging themselves, I have some sets from the 90s that I have, my Galaxy boxes I have, and it's fun because you can kind of look and see what they were trying to do to feature the product to make it attractive, maybe for a hobby store or a retailer or like a local store versus now. And I think even those vintage boxes, right? Even if it's beat up, it's still glorious because you can really see, like what the focus was, and maybe just the price. If anything else, and going, I remember when it was, $5 would probably get you an entire box of that. And although the storekeeper would probably look at you funny and go, I guess the kid really likes the stuff, and not give it a second thought. Now, a sealed box of that.
You also have to consider that, and I don't want to sound like I'm too old, but I remember those days when you were buying boxes and you could complete a set, like a whole set, and period. That's it. You don't have to chase, insert, parallel, you name it. So those days are gone, I know, but I remember when you could buy a box and get everything from it. Like, okay, fine. Then you can move to something else. Now it's much more individual card-based approach. So it's different. There's something for everyone, but you can't be a completist unless you go crazy or you have deep pockets. I don't know.
You had mentioned that you are going to Celebrations now, and it sounds like you're going to Celebration Japan. What are some of the things that you're kind of getting ready? You mentioned you're doing some swag cards. Am I assuming we're kind of putting some stuff together so when you're out there in what would be an obviously gorgeous venue, and of course, hello, it's all Star Wars, what are you doing to give away there?
I will probably go with trading cards again. Like what I've done in the past edition for California, for Anaheim, was doing a 4-card series with a Ahsoka theme. So I had 4 different designs. Again, with the back of the card with the vintage design, which I love. And 4 cards just for the 4 days of the convention. I was trying to hand out 1 card per day, but actually it doesn't work that way. At some point you have to give out everything at once. So it's not an issue, but because it's always a pleasure to meet people and just to give. Actually, that's the whole point. Just to start a conversation while you're in line, or just get an exchange for something that someone put in a button or in a patch or whatever. And I had what is really fascinating is this community where at the end of the convention you have a full bag or full boxes of stuff, and it's really amazing. The creativity is wow. I'm still amazed. So when I do my my tiny my tiny card. I'm like, oh, it's just a card with some design. Okay, that's fine. That will do. And for Japan, I will probably do the same. And I haven't, let's say, selected the designs, but it will be a 3 days convention. So I will probably have something like 3 cards as well. Don't know the theme yet, but we'll do something nice, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, definitely on the slide. Before you head out, the only request that I would have is let me look at them first. Just so since I won't be able to get out there in person, but I would be very interested to see, and I would also like you. I love the idea of saying like, hey, definitely tag me, put it in there, because it's fun to see who ends up with some of your swag, and then and just this, and to see where it goes. I think that's when you go back to when we kind of like, as we're kind of wrapping things down, to see them pulled in different places and by folks and all that. That's what's kind of fun. And you are so correct in that. I got getting to go. I went to, obviously Chicago was here. I got to go 1 day here, and then I got to go 3. I think I went 3 days in Anaheim. But yeah, you come back and everything from the patches to the buttons to the custom cards, go through the 501st and swooping up ones there. But yeah, it's what's nice about it, because you're right. I can always find on a secondary market that piece of that toy I'm looking for, that card I'm looking for.
That's not the point, because you get an exchange with someone that give you his stuff that is, put his heart into it, and it's, the best. Again, I have these boxes, and what really is my pleasure is just to open the box from time to time and to dig through all the stuff and say, wow. It brings back so many memories. And there's, all the people, all this community, to be honest, is the nicest and the most wonderful. They are incredible.
It is. Well, that seems like a good time to kind of bring us to a close here and let you kind of get on, because I know it's getting late. It's getting late in Paris. But just before that, is there anything that you, outside of, you talked about, there's a show coming up in May, and of course, Star Wars Celebrations coming around Easter. But is there anything else you're looking forward to? I know you're doing some stuff. It's not out yet. We're excited to see it. But is there anything else you're kind of excited to talk about, or just wanted to say before we wrap things up?
Well, it's true that my main focus at the moment is on Star Wars. As you said, I have some, I think 3 or 4 sets coming up.
Wow.
I'm not going to spill the beans.
No. That's not what we're here for, but that's good news either way.
So that's good. And also I'm trying to venture into other properties and other licenses. For instance, I'm also working for other publishers, such as Cryptozoic and Upper Deck.
Oh, nice.
So stuff will be out next year. So again, I'm not allowed to talk about it. But it's good because it's definitely not Star Wars. And for me, it's a good way also not to be branded as a, let's say, only Star Wars artist. I'm loving this universe, of course. And I have this coming up. And also I'm working on my own personal stuff, my own personal illustrations, which I will probably bring to my to the next convention I will be attending. So for me, it's just a mix of Star Wars, other licenses, and illustrations. My own stuff, let's say.
Nice. And that's kind of that's sort of the icing on the cake.
This is what I want to go.
Exactly. Really. Because then you have complete control of your IP. Before my daughter goes, we do have to kind of know what the cat's name is. There's an orange tabby cat in the back that has been right over your shoulder.
His name is a funny one. It's Nonoel.
Nonoel? All right. That went over well. He's been on the couch. He's been kind of moving back and forth on the couch. At any rate. But no, it's so nice because then you you can kind of flex those muscles. And once again, especially if you're going to shows, then I have, well, if you like this, then here's some other things too. And I can do all kinds of stuff with that. I can do little stuff or big stuff.
It's just let's say like a strategy, I would say, just to give having more credibility, more exposure, having the opportunity. I'm grateful for it to work on Star Wars. Allows me to bring people perhaps to other stuff that I'm producing and my own personal stuff as well. So that's good.
And so people can find you. Where's the easiest, best place, or where some of the other places as well that they can check out your art and get a hold of you?
Well, the best venue I would say would be via my Instagram account, Art of Stephane Leonardi, because that's the main point of contact. I have also my account on Facebook, but it's, let's say, mostly a duplication of what I'm doing on Instagram, and I have my website as well, but Instagram is the way to go. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Stephane, it was awesome to get a chance to talk with you. I always love, finding not only Topps artists here. I love talking to artists. I love finding out about the craft, but it's really kind of amazing to see that there is really great Star Wars art happening that's going to packs that we're opening here in the States, but it's being done abroad. So it even has that little more air of wow to it. But it's also fun that, to hear about custom cards and, kind of getting involved and like I said, kind of making your fandom like a little wholer, a little funner, and also seeing what happens when you start going to shows. At any rate, we'll have to kind of check back with you after the big Paris show to kind of see what happened, what worked and what didn't work. And then I also love to find out how Celebration went for you, as I always love hearing stories.
Sure. No problem.
But great talking with you.
Yeah, thanks again, Greg.
Can I offer you a libation to celebrate the closing of our shared narrative?
Once again, I want to thank my guest, Stephane Leonardi, for being on the program tonight. It was a pleasure to get a chance to learn more about his story, his art, and what's happening over on the Paris card scene. Pretty cool stuff. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I have. All right, I'm going to let Card Squadron take it out. We'll talk to you soon.
The Rebel Base Card Podcast focuses on cards, collecting, and the Star Wars community, and appreciates you coming along for the ride.
If you have any feedback for this episode, you can reach out to the program in a number of ways. You can leave a comment on the Instagram post for this episode. You can also DM Greg on Instagram at Rebel Base Card.
Make sure to also follow the Rebel Base Card on Twitter and Facebook at Rebel Base Card. If you want, you can send an email to greg@rebelbasecard.com.
And you can find show notes for this and all episodes on the website rebelbasecard.com. In the Star Wars Card Trader app, and just about every other one, you can find Greg at CornFedTech.
The Rebel Base Card uses the hashtag Card Squadron as a way to alert friends about cool cards and recent drops in the galaxy far, far away. It's a great way to bring our community a little bit closer together and help one another finish our sets in time. We collect, communicate, and commiserate. Well, at least when we run out of credits or crystals to spend on our digital collections. Join the fun, even if all the other cool squadron names were already taken. And remember, we collect as one and would be honored if you join us.
And if you are a sketch card artist, or Star Wars artist or collector, cosplayer, and want to talk about your work, your craft or passion, drop Greg a line. I'm sure he'd love to hear your story. You can also help the show by leaving a comment or review on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you got this episode.
Otherwise, the mission is clear. Keep those cards out of the hands of the Empire, and the Rebel Base Card will return soon.
This podcast is not affiliated in any way with Topps, Disney, or Star Wars, nor is it endorsed by Disney or Lucasfilm, and is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. All names and sounds and any other related items are properties of their respective trademarks and or copyright holders here in the U.S. and abroad. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com.
That's it.